everybody at Breaking Points know, Crystal and I, we love a good focus group, especially when the focus group basically just slaps the media in the face. Here we had CNN, a bunch of Republican voters who were with CNN after the town hall, in which they stunned the actual interviewees because they didn't give them the answers they expected. Let's take a listen.
Does it bother you that he keeps talking about 2020 and not 2024? I'll ask you first. This is Jonathan Leslie. He's 40, Republican, voted for Trump twice. How do you feel about those lies?
So I feel like part of it's also the media narrative, as you guys asked him the first question at the town hall about the 2020 election, rather than current stuff.
So don't you think he could say it's time for him to start talking about 2024 and not lies that aren't true?
Couldn't the media ask him a question about 2024?
Well, there were questions, but you're right. That was the first thing, that's something that was on our mind. And that's why I was asked first.
What I want to ask you first of all is, do you think, show of hands, anybody think Donald Trump looks better after this town hall? Any of you think he looks worse? Any of you think the same thing about him as you did when you walked in? So all of you feel that way.
There you go. They're like, why we kept saying all this stuff about 2020? It's like, well, you asked him about 2020. And they're like, shouldn't you talk about 2024? They're like, well, why didn't you ask him? That's a great question. It's a great question. As usual, they know so much better than we do. Yeah. And my personal favorite at the end there, like, raise your hand if you feel better about him. Raise your hand if you feel worse about him. Raise your hand if you feel the same. I've talked about it here before. Debates and these types of things, statistically, political science data, we have like 60 years to tell us this, have zero impact on the election. Zero. It's almost always about more structural factors. Personal stuff, it can matter, it's difficult to predict. But this is also gets to my whole thing around the fact checking. What is the point of constantly being like, no, actually, sir, this is 52 miles of wall, not 450. Guess what? The people who believe that Trump built the wall are never going to change their minds, even if he didn't build a scrap of wall. And then also people who believe that there was not a single mile of wall built are not going to change their minds after you were like, well, actually, there were 52. What you feel about Trump is baked in. He's been on the national stage now since 2015. Almost 10 years. We were coming up on a decade of the Trump era in American politics. It's all here at this point.
And the limits of fact-checking were so exposed by that exchange, too, because they were so obviously talking past each other.
Exactly. Thank you.
What he was saying, he's like, look, I rehabbed a bunch of rusty old crappy fence, and they wouldn't count that in my 52 miles. And she would say, well, you did 52 miles.
Yes.
Secondly, it's like...
They're both right, actually. Yeah.
They are both right. But then secondly, it's like, well, you guys don't want that wall anyway. So why are you kind of criticizing him for not building enough of the thing that you don't want him to build any of?
Yes.
So the whole thing, because when you get into fact checking, it takes the kind of ideology and ideas out of it.
I don't believe in neutral fact checks. I actually think that outside of like literal math, like 2 + 2 or whatever, or physics, I don't think that there is such thing as a fact check. Everything is relative. Everything is basically up for debate. Everything is everything is at the level of argumentation. Even whenever, like we were talking about the stolen election, it's like, yeah, well, if you just put it that way, then somebody can say about this. If you put it the way Trump does, then okay, like you can get into that. But even then, it's like, the point is that about changing people's minds. And I think that the news, at best, what I like to do when we meet people out in the wild, like what's the most edifying thing they say? Say, you make me have sense of the world, help my relationship with my parents because I felt like we were talking past each other. And instead, we watch your show together and we come away with different takeaways and we sit down and we're like, well, here's what I agreed with what Saagar said or Crystal said and Ryan said or Emily said it. But I realized that because they could talk together afterwards that you and I can talk now as well. I mean, that the point is that you can even start from the same show and come away with 2 completely different opinions. That's humanity.
And I think you got to worry about getting too rigid. When Trump said, why did I make that call to Georgia?
Yeah.
Because I was questioning the results of the election. He just says it outright.
Yeah.
And Democrats are going to be like, well, that's insane. You should go to prison for that. But I also think Democrats are going to regret in the future setting a standard by which it is wrong to question the results of elections. What if Republicans in Arizona or Wisconsin, Michigan, Alabama, Democrats are kind of in conflict here because on the one hand, they're always accusing Republicans of voter suppression and trying to steal elections, and then at the same time saying that you can never question the results of an election. So I bet in our lifetimes, we're going to have a point where Republicans are going to straight up steal some election somewhere, and Democrats are then going to be handcuffed a little bit in the way that they're able to point to the ways
Look at
that it
Stacey
happened.
Abrams. Stacey Abrams was allowed to do it in 2018, but then immediately after the Trump thing, they were like, "Hey, Stacey, shut up." If you
Yeah,
want to
Stacey,
continue to be able to-
let's.
If you want to be able to continue selling books and grifting off Michael Bloomberg,
You're killing us with
and all
this
these other people,
2018
yeah,
thing.
you gotta shut up. You gotta accept it and just kind of walk away after you lost a couple more times. Anyway, I thought that these are our big personality, I guess, takeaways. We're gonna go ahead into the policy now. Let's get to it.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.